Hi everyone, Lynn Palermo here from the Family History Writing Studio, and welcome back to our weekly Storylines writing lesson. So today I want to talk to you about the number one problem family historians have when it comes to writing their ancestor stories. Can you guess what that is? That number one problem? It's time. Everybody struggles with time and how do I fit writing into my life. So today I'm going to give you a few tips on how you can go about doing that. So I don't have a lot of problem with fitting writing into my life. I'm pretty lucky and I'm very grateful for that. And we're empty nesters at this point in our life. Our girls are gone. I have no grandchildren yet, so I don't have to worry about that aspect. And my husband's still working. So I have lots of time in my day to be able to write. And so I realize that that's not a universal schedule. Not everybody has the luxury of what I have. And so it's really important that we look at our individual schedules to try and figure out how we can bring writing into our life. I equate writing a lot of times to dieting or exercise, in that we always struggle with, let's say, exercise and putting exercise into our life. And generally that is because we try to change our life around the exercise rather than trying to make the exercise work within the schedules that we already have. And what happens is we can't sustain it. So it's really important that we find a way to sustain the writing in our normal schedules. So your first thing to do is to figure out how much time do you have? How much time do you have available to write? So the best thing to do here is to take stock. Do an inventory. Take a couple of weeks and write down every single day what you do. From the time you get up in the morning till the time you go to bed, maybe record every 15 minutes or 30 minutes what you've done. Now the whole idea here is, now we can take a look at this schedule and say, are there gaps here that I can find to put writing in? Are there things that I can do away with? So perhaps that 1 hour you spent on Pinterest or scrolling through Facebook, there's a couple hours right there that maybe I can use for writing instead of being on social media. Perhaps there's some tasks that you can consolidate together that would free up some time for your writing as well. So you want to go ahead, you want to take a look at your schedule for 1 to 2 weeks and record it and see where you can find time in your schedule at this point for putting writing in to your life. Now, I usually write in the morning. That's when I'm the most creative. I can't write at nighttime. My brain doesn't work at nighttime, but I find in the morning that is the best. And of course I have that flexibility. I find that if I don't write immediately in the morning, then once my day gets going, I don't get back to it. And so I know it's like exercise for me again. I've got to do it right away. Otherwise, I won't find time in the rest of the day to do it. Now, once you've found your time, it's important to prioritize that time. So what do I mean by that? We want to make the most of that time that we have. So right now, you may not be writing, but you might need to outline a story. Well, you're going to use that time to do just that. And then once you've got the story outlined, then you'll go ahead and use that writing time to put down that first draft. And then once the first draft is done, you'll use that writing time to do your revisions. That's where I feel like the real magic happens. And then after your revisions are done, you're going to move into that editing process. This is all going to be done through that scheduled writing time that you have identified. So you're making the most of that writing time each and every day. The other tool is a deadline. Deadlines are huge in completing projects, and I love deadlines. I can't work without a deadline. Now, I don't want you to just throw an arbitrary deadline at your project and say, let's finish it by this day. You have to have a reason you've come up with this deadline. Now, that given, I've worked with many a client who have said, oh, they come to me and they want to write a family history book and they want to have it done in 3 months. So that's where I have to say to them, well, do you work? Do you plan on doing this full time? Because that's what it's going to take to write a family history book in 3 months. You need to have realistic goals. And that's why identifying the time in your schedule and making the most of that time is important. Now, once you decide that you're going to write a particular project, so let's say you're going to write a novella. Now, a novella is a short novel, and that usually runs between 20 and 30,000 words. And I'm using this as an example because it's what I just finished. So let's say you're going to write a 30,000 word novella on a particular ancestor. Well, how long is that going to take you to accomplish? How do we choose a deadline for that? Well, we have 30,000 words. How much can you write in 1 hour? Well, time yourself if you're not sure and figure it out. And then you'll be able to see, well, according to your schedule, if you can write 5 hours a week, okay, and you can do 1,000 words an hour, that's 5,000 words a week. So that means you could literally finish this novella in 6 weeks' time in terms of getting the first draft done. That's not the rewriting and the editing, of course. So you've got to then think out that process of, okay, how much for the revisions? I would pretty much give yourself the same amount of time as you've done the draft, and then your editing, and then and if you're going to send it to beta readers and then to another editor again, you want to figure out how much time they need with it before they get it back to you. And then from all of that, you can come up with a realistic deadline to have this story done. So I break it down and say, I want the first draft done by this time. I want the revisions done by this time. I want it ready to go to beta readers by this time. So give yourself a number of deadlines along the way, but make them realistic based on your schedule and what you can write. Because if you're not looking at your schedule and you're saying, well, I'm going to write the novella in 30,000 words in 2 weeks, well, that's 15,000 words a week. If you don't have time in that in your schedule, then that's absolutely unrealistic deadline. So let's make them realistic so that we can meet them. The other thing that you can do is what's called word sprints. Now, word sprints are trying to get down as much words in a limited amount of time. So let's say you're going to write for 1 hour every day. So maybe your goal is to write 1,000 words. Okay, great. And you can do that. Now, maybe after a couple weeks, you want to get that up to 1,500 words. And then maybe after a month, you want to get that up to 2,000 words. So the whole idea is that in that 1 hour time or 2 hour times, or however much time you have, you are putting out as much words as possible. Now, the whole idea of this is just to get that first draft done. So obviously this isn't something you're going to use for revisions or editing because that's a little more tedious and slower work. But if you want to get that first draft done really quickly, then word sprints are a great way to do that. Word sprints are more about quantity than about quality. We're not stopping to editing or doing any grammar checks or anything like that. And I normally don't do that in a first draft anyway, but certainly during a word sprint, you have no time to do that. It's just about really doing this brain dump and getting the story down on paper. Next, don't be afraid to pivot. And so what do I mean by that? Well, life changes, our schedules change. Things happen. So pivot your writing schedule with the rest of your life. So let's say it's summertime and you have to babysit the grandkids during the summertime. All right, so maybe your writing of 2 hours every morning isn't going to happen. All right, what is your new schedule? Take a look at it. Come up with another time that you can write. Maybe you have to scale it back a bit. That's great, as long as you don't take it completely out of your schedule. So don't be ashamed if you have to change that schedule. That's all right. Things happen. I get that. and that's okay, but just adapt your writing to that. Don't just throw it out the window because, for lack of a better term, the shit hit the fan. Look at that schedule. Okay, where can I find a couple of hours each week to write? So writing, if we want to write our family history stories, it's a long-term project, and it's an important project. You know, you might have a dream to get your genealogy research into stories, because it's a great way to leave your research for future generations. Think about that box of stuff that you have in the closet, those file folders. Who's going to be interested in those when you're gone, right? We want to put that information into stories, into books, things that will be passed along and will be cherished. And also, not even just for future generations, but this is your own legacy. You've invested a lot of hard work and time into your genealogy research. You want to make sure it's going to be around for future generations. And so let's not take a chance that somebody just tosses your genealogy out the door because there's a bunch of old stuff in a closet. Let's make sure we put it in a book, into some sort of a shareable format that they're going to enjoy for years to come. Okay, that is it this week. Let's go out and find ourselves some time to write.